do a deep dive into the very strong emotion, anger?
In conventional therapy, psychology, etc., anger is considered to be an emotion. Spirit would teach us that anger is not a true emotion. That what anger is a set of events, a behavior that a person enters into in order to control oneself or other people, another person or other people. And the control that they want is to suppress the feeling that they've got. They are not honest in expressing the feeling that they've got, and that feeling is always either coming from unfairness or lack of equality. Let's look at an example of that. You might say to your partner, you're displaying really selfish behavior again. And let's assume that a previous partner, or a mother, or a father, or whatever, somewhere here in the background, has told your partner they're a selfish person. And immediately that your partner is feeling that's unfair for you to say that. But what they're bringing into their mind is also the mother who said it, the previous partner who said it, is speaking in their mind too. And they want to shut you down. They don't want to hear any more about this. Their mind is saying, I've heard this so much before. I don't want to look at this. I don't want to examine this for myself. So they will attack you back. They might call you a nasty person. They might call you a horrible person. They might swear at you. They'll raise their voice. They'll do whatever behavior they want to engage in. That behavior is to control their feeling, to suppress their feeling, but it's also to close you down. So you're going to feel frightened of that, so I'm not going to say any more. The answer to that is for that person to say, I feel really hurt that you've said this to me. This is really a trigger for me because my mother used to tell me the same thing and I used to get really hurt. They won't know that it's equality or it's feeling sorry for oneself. But they can express, I don't feel it's fair for you to do this to me. In which case then a discussion can take place and there's no need for anger. If someone honestly expresses how they feel, there ought not to be a need for anger. But what happens often with women and with men too is a woman will express it, it's not heard by the man. They express it again, it's not heard by the man. They express again, it's not heard. And then the anger is building up because what's building up inside is, this is not fair. I keep telling you and you're not listening. Therefore I don't have equality and this is not fair to me. So now you've got the whole kit and caboodle of anger where you get that explosion. Generally in anger there's a meanness. And Spirit would define meanness as a moment of insanity in a person's life, a moment of insanity. It's a moment when you open your mouth and you use it to give words that you really haven't put much thought into and you don't care what the consequences are. You're just angry and you want to lash out. That's a moment of insanity.
And what happens if it becomes more than a moment?
Do you mean that the behavior is repeated?
Yes, regularly so.
If I was the partner of someone and I would advise someone who's a partner to someone where that is repeated and repeated and repeated, firstly, get therapy. And let's see if that can solve the issue for the person who's engaging in that behavior. If they refuse to have therapy or if therapy is not making any difference, you have to leave that relationship. It's for your own sanity and for your own growth. You have to leave that relationship. And people would say, as they often do, but what about the children? Well, it is going to affect the children, and that was always the plan, the spiritual plan anyway. But it's also teaching the children some terribly, terribly poor habits. If it's a mother, you're teaching the children this is how a man can treat you over and over and over again, and you don't have a right to do anything about it. And if it's a woman, it's the same thing. You're teaching the children the same thing. This is how a man can be treated over and over and over again, and he doesn't have the right to do anything about it. Well, we do have the right. We have the right in every circumstance to be treated with equality, to be treated with respect. And if that's not happening on a constant basis, then we have a right to take an action.
Because you explained to us in spiritual counselling that if someone's continuously mean, the only option is to leave because it shocks them, shocks their behaviour into change.
It can do, certainly not for everyone, but certainly I advise some people, ask them to leave the house, move out of the house, ask them to go to therapy, give it 3 months, give it 6 months. Meet and have a coffee in that time. Or they come, if there's children involved and it's a dad, come to the house once a week and have dinner, and let's see how the therapy's working, let's see how the behaviour, let's see the desire to change and the desire to introspect in one's own behaviour. And if at the end of 3 to 6 months there's no change there, the relationship has to end.
And what about suppressed anger? What's the consequence of suppressed anger?
Well, suppressed anger, again, is just simply a person who's not being honest. And there's always, of course, suppression in anger, and that will go to repression. The difference between repression and suppression is when you know something and you don't want to discuss it, and that's what I've just explained right now. That's where the anger is being used to hold the suppression of the feeling. Repression is when something has been so traumatic that it's pushed below the subconscious. And the answer a person will often give you to that is, I don't know. I don't remember anything before the age of starting school. That's a very common answer for a lot of people, especially children that have been brought up in an abusive family, or been sexually abused, violently abused, whatever. The mind closes down, and they push it down below the subconscious level. And of course, when you're dealing with someone like that, there's many, many, many different ways that we help to bring that up into the subconscious. Hahnemann healing is one of the most important ones to get it up to the consciousness, and then we can start to discuss it.
And you've mentioned unfairness. Can you explain from a spiritual perspective, help me understand unfairness?
Unfairness is when someone believes they're not getting the same treatment as someone else and they deserve it. And or they're simply not getting the treatment that they believe they should have. So that might be a narcissist. I mean, we're going into different categories here, but a narcissist who believes everyone is there to provide for them. And if they're not, that's unfair. A person can bring unfairness forward, these conditions forward into any given life. If a person has had a life where they've lived that life and they've died, and in the dying process they believe they've been treated unfairly in life, and that's been their calling card all through life, that's what they've put up there for everyone to see, they will have to have a life again where they will have unfairness again, and they're meant to overcome it. They're meant to understand what that person's got is not what I'm meant to get. It's not what I'm intended to get. And I'll go and I'll seek what's right for me. Therefore, the feeling of unfairness disappears.
If someone comes and says, oh, that's not fair, or everything's unfair, and then they either turn to blame or self-pity, how do we overcome that cycle?
That takes a fair amount of therapy and a fair amount of sessions, because what you're going to firstly is, where did this belief of unfairness start? And it might have started from a parent. It might have started at school. Somewhere, something has happened that has caused them to feel that a situation was unfair. And when they see a similar situation happening again, the unfairness follows them every single time. So what I do with people in therapy with that is, what I've just said, is to try to teach them what's right for another person is not necessarily right for them. And unfairness can also come from the person who expects and wants a lot, but is not willing to put in the work to get it. And they will say, you know, look at Johnny, he got this. And look at me, I'm doing the same thing, but I didn't get this. But when we actually examine what they are doing, they're not doing anything like what Johnny's doing. They're not anywhere as dedicated. They're not working as hard. They're not applying oneself as hard as what Johnny does, or whatever. So you need to point that out to them and say, Johnny got what he did because he worked for it. You're not. You're just expecting it. And this is not how life works. We have to teach them that in life you have to give and you have to get. And we have to teach them in life that no one will ever get to the pinnacle of any work without hard work, without effort. It just doesn't come. Someone might have a gift at a certain thing, so it looks easy to others. Others will look and say, gosh, that's so easy to them. They're so lucky. But that gift would have been given for a reason, and that gift would have been honed in other lifetimes. So what they're doing is they're bringing forward experience from other lifetimes.
I remember learning about the values, and it just flipped my idea about what unfairness meant. I'd just never considered that life, because I would be, well, that's not fair. Or when I would think about, I believe in equality or fairness. It's a different way of looking at it.
Yes, it is. And of course, when we're talking about equality, we are saying that everybody is entitled to an equal opportunity. But not every person is going to get the same thing. And I often, or always do in counselling, I often say, there's a child here at school who wants to be a neurologist. And there's a child here at school who wants to be a neurologist also. Two different schools. And one's a very, very bright child and has got a gift of academia. They're probably going to make the grade as a neurologist if they work at the level required. The other child hasn't got that gift of academia. They are entitled to the opportunity to try to get into medical school and to try to fulfill their dream. But at some point, they're probably going to be told, no, you're not accepted into medical school because you're not at the academic standard required. And that person has to come to terms with the fact that that's not meant for themselves in that journey. And for this guy who is a neurologist, it was meant. And he was given the academic ability to go along with it. This guy here has probably got a very, very different purpose. It might be that he sells something in a shop, but he has got such a wonderful gift with people and talking to people, and everyone who deals with him comes away feeling absolutely wonderful they've had that exchange. Yeah, this person has to come to terms with the fact that that's what their journey is meant to be. It doesn't help this guy to say, that's not fair. That's not fair, because that's not going to change their life. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to help them move forward.
And you say that when anger is in, love is out. Can you explain that?
When you're angry with someone, you're not loving that person. And we often hear, as a therapist, I will often hear in partnerships, in relationships, I love him, but I'm really angry with him. It's a nonsense, and we need to point this out. It's a nonsense. When anger's in, love is out. Let's have honesty. I'm really angry with you right now. I do not feel loving with you right now. If you're really angry with someone and you're being genuine, do you want to go to bed with them and make love with them? No, you don't. You want to tell them, go and have a walk in the park. I don't want to see you for the next 2 hours, yeah? Let's be honest about that. Let's be honest. Let's say, I am angry with you. I'm hurting by what you did. I'm trying to work my way through this, but right now, I don't feel love for you. Right now, I don't even feel I want to be in your company. And I'll let you know as soon as I have worked through this. Yeah, that's honesty. That's how relationships build. That's how we deal with anger. It's no good saying to people, don't feel angry. People are going to feel angry. Human beings feel it's unfair. Human beings feel inequality. But can you imagine the difficulty a person has when in a family they have been brought up with parents who say to them, you can't be angry. Anger is really ugly. We don't have anger in this home. We don't have angry children in this home. And that happens a lot. And so that person grows up feeling angry that they were suppressed anyway by the parent. Anger. There is your suppressed anger that you asked the question about before. I can't show my anger because that's a bad person. So this person here who's trying to discuss this conversation with me, I need to shut them down. I need to just stop them so this is not on the agenda because it makes me feel a bad person. I've been told I'm a bad person. Yeah? So there's a lot of conflict there. But the natural reaction of a person, unless they've got really great self-discipline to just keep suppressing anger, the natural inclination one day will be to just explode.
What about people who don't believe that they're angry?
Lots of those around, aren't there? Is it a repressed anger or is it a suppressed anger? If it's a suppressed anger, they know that they're doing it. If it's a repressed anger, it will nearly always go back to the childhood years. So that's the first thing. The first thing I do with a client who walks in and they're angry and I can feel the energy of the anger, the first thing I will do is I can feel you're very angry. That often will be met with an angry response. And then you can use that to point out. They'll say, I'm not angry, and blah, blah. You can use that to point out and say, but you're just displaying anger right now, and this is how you did it. And this will often be the person who's been told by the family, by the parents, we don't display anger in this house. Being angry is bad. So they're suppressing because they feel they're a bad person. If they show it, they're suppressing because they've been told it's an ugly, ugly feeling. It's people won't like you if you do that. So you just start with your therapy, of course, exploring where their anger comes from. But again, right back to saying to them and showing them, you're really being very dishonest about your own feelings. And let's explore where hiding those feelings, what kind of life that's causing you to live that you can't feel very happy about. And generally a person will start to open up through that. And if you explain to them that it's natural, that every human being has anger, you can be angry from what's happened to you at school. You can be angry from what's happened to you in a sporting team. You can be angry for what's happened in your own family home. And you can carry that forward. Everyone has anger. A child can be angry that their dog died. The child holds that memory as angry because they believe that's not fair. They thought that dog was going to be with them forever. It can be as simple as that. But you have to go on that journey with your client. You have to take them on the journey of discovery. Then explain to them anger and explain to them the benefit of being honest in expressing the feeling.
So if you're not expressing the truth of the feeling, then it can be quite destructive.
Absolutely destructive. And what you also must teach them, where people get into a lot of trouble, is you must also teach them they are entitled to express feeling. The other person is entitled, if they wish, not to listen and not to acknowledge. Because in therapy, people will often hold a belief that when they express, the other person has to listen and do exactly what they want. The other person has got free will too. They don't have to listen. And they can say, you're talking rubbish. What you've just expressed to me is a lot of nonsense. I don't want to hear it. That can bring more anger. So you have to prepare your client for that, to say, you can express, he has a choice not to listen. And then you have to make other decisions further down the track.
So it sounds like it's a very important, anger seems like a very important emotion, feeling to deal with, because it is a sign of being dishonest.
It's a learned behavior rather than a true emotion. It's a learned behavior.
For more spiritual knowledge, remember to subscribe. If any of the information Ian and Pearl spoke about piqued your interest, make sure you like and comment on this video below. There's so much knowledge and advice being delivered from Spirit to you via this channel. Healing your physical and emotional pains will guide you towards a more loving and meaningful life. This is the Spiritual Renaissance.